I've lived in my fair share of questionable apartments, the kind with paper-thin walls and neighbors who seem to operate on a completely different schedule than the rest of the world. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened in apartment 4B. It started subtly, as these things often do. I'd been living there for about 3 months. It was a decent place, a bit old, but the rent was cheap for the city. My next-door neighbor, a quiet, elderly woman named Mrs. Gable in 4A, mostly kept to herself. We'd exchange pleasantries in the hallway, and that was about it. The first time it happened, I was in my kitchen making dinner. A soft, rhythmic tapping sound started. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like it was coming from the shared wall between my apartment and Mrs. Gable's. I figured she was just hanging a picture or something. I turned up my music and ignored it. But it continued, off and on, for the next few days. Always the same pattern. 3 quick taps. A pause. 3 more. One evening around 10 p.m., the tapping started again. This time it was louder, more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. It was starting to get on my nerves. I was trying to watch a movie, and the sound was incredibly distracting. Finally, I'd had enough. I paused my movie, marched over to the wall, and knocked back firmly. "Could you please keep it down?" I called out. Silence. The tapping stopped. A wave of relief washed over me. Finally, some peace and quiet. I went back to my movie, but the rest of the night I felt a strange unease. The silence felt heavier than before. The next day, I saw our building's superintendent, Mr. Henderson, in the lobby. I decided to mention the noise just in case. "Hey, Mr. Henderson," I started. "Has anyone else complained about noise from 4A? My neighbor was making a lot of racket last night." Mr. Henderson looked at me, his brow furrowed in confusion. 4A? You mean Mrs. Gable's old place? Old place? I asked. She was just there yesterday, knocking on the wall. His expression shifted from confusion to something I couldn't quite place. Pity, maybe? "Son," he said slowly, "Mrs. Gable passed away a month ago. Heart attack. The apartment's been empty ever since. We're scheduled to clean it out next week." I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart started pounding in my chest. Empty? That was impossible. I'd heard her. I'd heard the knocking. I stammered a thank you to Mr. Henderson and practically ran back to my apartment, my mind racing. I must have been mistaken. Maybe it was the pipes. Or mice. There had to be a logical explanation. But that night the knocking came back. Tap, tap, tap. It was louder this time, more desperate. And it wasn't just coming from the shared wall anymore. It sounded like it was coming from all around me. From the wall behind my couch. From the wall in my bedroom. From the ceiling above my head. I was paralyzed with fear. I pulled the blankets over my head like a little kid, trying to block out the sound, but it was useless. It felt like the entire apartment was vibrating with the force of the knocking. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to stop. After what felt like an eternity, it did. The apartment fell silent again, but the fear lingered. I didn't sleep a wink that night. The next day I was a wreck. I couldn't focus at work. All I could think about was the empty apartment next door and the impossible knocking. When I got home that evening, I stood outside my door for a full 10 minutes, my hand trembling as I held the key. I was terrified to go inside. What if the knocking started again? What if it was worse this time? Taking a deep breath, I finally unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet. I walked through each room, my senses on high alert, listening for any sound out of the ordinary. Nothing. I let out a shaky breath of relief. Maybe it was over. Maybe my mind had just been playing tricks on me. I decided to take a shower to wash away the stress of the last 24 hours. I turned the water on, letting it get nice and hot, and stepped in. The steam filled the small bathroom, clouding the mirror. For a few minutes I actually felt myself relax. The hot water felt amazing. And then I heard it, tap, tap, tap. It was quiet, almost lost in the sound of the running water. But it was there. My blood ran cold. I froze, listening intently. Tap, tap, tap. Tap was closer this time. Much, much closer. It wasn't coming from the walls of the apartment. It was coming from inside the bathroom with me. My eyes darted around the small, steam-filled room. The shower curtain, the sink, the toilet, the door. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the door, but not the outside of the door. The sound was coming from the inside, from my side. I slowly turned my head, my heart feeling like it was going to explode out of my chest. I looked at the bathroom door, which I had locked when I came in. The steam from the shower had condensed on the wood, and I could see faint water droplets tracing paths down the white paint, and then I saw the source of the sound. Just below the doorknob, the wood seemed to be dot, dot, dot flexing, bulging outward in a small, distinct spot with each rhythmic knock. Tap. The wood bulged. Tap. It bulged again. Tap. It was knocking from inside the door. Something was inside the door. I can't even describe the sound that came out of my mouth. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated terror. I scrambled out of the shower, slipping on the wet floor, and fumbled with the lock on the door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the knob. I burst out of the bathroom and didn't stop running. I flew out of my apartment, not even bothering to close the door behind me. I ran down the 4 flights of stairs and burst out into the street, gasping for air. I didn't have my phone, my wallet, or even shoes on my feet. I just ran. I never went back. I called Mr. Henderson the next day from a payphone, babbling incoherently about knocking and something being inside my door. He probably thought I was crazy. I told him to keep my security deposit and mail whatever he could salvage of my belongings to my parents' house. I didn't care about my stuff. I just knew I could never, ever set foot in apartment 4B again. To this day I have no idea what was in that apartment, what was knocking from inside my own door. I moved to a new city, got a new job, and now live in a modern high-rise with concrete walls. But sometimes when it's late at night and the building is quiet, I'll hear a faint noise. A settling pipe, maybe, the wind, but my heart still stops. And I listen, praying I don't hear those 3 soft, rhythmic taps. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have your own creepy apartment experiences, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling tales. Stay safe out there. It was one of those miserably cold winter nights, the kind where the rain feels like tiny shards of ice against your skin. I'd just finished a grueling late shift at the diner, and of course my car decided that was the perfect moment to die. Just completely dead. My phone was also on its last legs, flickering with a low battery warning. I tried calling a cab, but the wait was over an hour. Desperate and shivering, I opened a ride-sharing app. It was my last resort. I rarely used them, especially late at night, but I just wanted to get home. A car was nearby, just 5 minutes away. Relief washed over me. The app showed the driver's name, Alex, and a picture of a pretty generic-looking guy. A few minutes later, a dark sedan pulled up. It matched the license plate, so I quickly hopped in the back, grateful to be out of the rain. "Thanks so much for picking me up," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "My car just gave up on me." The driver, Alex, just nodded. He didn't turn around, didn't say a word. I could only see the back of his head and his eyes in the rearview mirror. They were dark and seemed to just stare straight ahead. I figured maybe he was just tired or not much of a talker. Fine by me. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and just enjoyed the warmth of the car. The silence started to feel a bit heavy after a few minutes. The only sounds were the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers and the soft hum of the engine. I checked the route on my phone. We were going the right way, so that was good. I tried to make some small talk again, just to break the awkward quiet. "Pretty nasty weather out there, huh?" I said. Nothing, not even a grunt. He just kept driving, his posture rigid, hands gripping the steering wheel at a perfect 10-2. It was starting to feel less like he was just quiet and more like he was deliberately ignoring me. A weird feeling began to creep up my spine. I've had quiet drivers before, but this was different. This felt intentional. The silence wasn't empty. It was filled with unspoken tension. I glanced at his profile picture on the app again. The guy in the photo had a slight smile. The person driving this car felt worlds away from that picture. I looked at his eyes in the rearview mirror again. They were locked on the road, unblinking. It was unnerving. I told myself I was just tired and letting my imagination run wild. It was a long shift, after all. I'm just being paranoid. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It was like the air in the car was getting thicker, harder to breathe. I decided to put in my headphones, hoping some music would distract me. As I fumbled for them in my bag, my hand brushed against something on the seat next to me. It felt like a small, leather-bound book. I hadn't noticed it when I got in. Curiosity got the better of me. I discreetly picked it up. It was a small, worn journal. I knew I shouldn't, but I opened it. The handwriting inside was a messy, frantic scrawl. The first page I saw had a single sentence repeated over and over again. "He never speaks. He never speaks. He never speaks." My blood ran cold. I quickly flipped to another page. It was more of the same, but with different phrases. "Don't look in his eyes. He knows what you're thinking. Get out of the car." My heart was pounding in my chest. This had to be a joke, right? Some kind of weird prank? I slammed the journal shut and shoved it back onto the seat. I glanced up at the rearview mirror, and my breath caught in my throat. Alex's eyes were on me. He wasn't looking at the road anymore. He was staring directly at me through the mirror, and for the first time his expression changed. A slow, thin smile spread across his face. It was the most terrifying smile I had ever seen. It didn't reach his eyes, which were as cold and empty as before. He still didn't say a word. The smile was enough. It was a smile that said, "I know." Panic seized me. I needed to get out. Now, I looked at the app. We were still a good 10 minutes from my house, driving through a dark, industrial part of town I didn't recognize. There were no other cars, no people, just empty warehouses and flickering streetlights. My hand hovered over the door handle. Should I jump out of a moving car? I think you can just drop me here, I stammered, my voice trembling. This is fine. He didn't respond. He didn't slow down. He just kept driving, that horrible smile still plastered on his face. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. I felt trapped like an animal in a cage. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do. My phone was about to die. I couldn't call for help. Then I remembered something my dad, a retired cop, had taught me. He always said if you're ever in a dangerous situation in a car, do something unexpected. Create a distraction. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged forward and slammed my hand on the horn. The sudden, blaring noise seemed to startle him. His smile vanished, and he jerked the wheel. The car swerved violently, screeching to a halt. In that split second of chaos, I didn't hesitate. I threw open the door and scrambled out, falling onto the wet pavement. I didn't look back, I just ran. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life. I didn't care about the rain, the cold, or the ache in my lungs. I just ran, fueled by pure terror. I could hear the car door slam shut behind me. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw the dark sedan just sitting there, its headlights cutting through the rain. It didn't follow. It just waited. I didn't stop running until I saw the familiar lights of a 24-hour convenience store in the distance. I burst through the doors, gasping for air, probably looking like a crazy person. The clerk looked up, startled. I just collapsed onto a chair, shaking uncontrollably. After I calmed down, I called the police and my parents. I reported the incident to the ride-sharing company. They were very concerned and immediately suspended the driver's account pending an investigation. But here's the part that still haunts me. A few days later, the police contacted me. They had found the car. It was abandoned in that same industrial area where I'd jumped out. There was no sign of the driver, Alex, but they did find something in the car. It was that little leather journal. They told me it wasn't just a journal. It was a collection of stories written by different people. They were all accounts from previous passengers. Each entry described a ride with a silent driver, a driver who never spoke, who just smiled, that terrifying smile. Each story ended with the passenger either escaping in a panic, just like I did, or, well, the entry just stopped. The last entries in the book were all unfinished. The police tried to trace the owner of the car and the rideshare account. The name, Alex, was a fake. The photo was a stock image. The person who had been driving me didn't seem to exist. The company had no real information on him. He was a ghost. I never used a ride-sharing app again. To this day I get a chill whenever I'm in a car with someone I do know, and it gets too quiet. I can't help but glance at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those cold, empty eyes and that horrible, knowing smile. I don't know who or what was driving that car. I just know that I was lucky. I finished my entry. Others weren't so fortunate. So if you ever get into a car and the driver won't speak, don't wait. Just get out. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have a scary story of your own, share it in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there. Every year, without fail, I drive 5 hours upstate to my parents' house for our annual family reunion. It's always been a highlight of my year. The smell of my mom's apple pie, my dad's terrible jokes, my cousins running wild in the backyard. It was a slice of perfect, nostalgic Americana. But this year was different. From the moment I pulled into the driveway, I knew something was wrong. The house, usually buzzing with life, was dead silent. The windows were dark, and the porch light, which my dad always left on for me, was out. I got out of my car, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The air was heavy and still. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, my voice sounding small and weak against the silence. I pushed the front door open. It was unlocked, which was the first red flag. My dad was a stickler for security. The house was pitch black. I fumbled for the light switch, my heart pounding in my chest. When the lights flickered on, the scene before me made my blood run cold. The living room was a disaster. Furniture was overturned, a lamp was shattered on the floor, and dark, muddy footprints tracked across the pristine white carpet. But the strangest thing? My parents were sitting on the couch, side by side, dressed in their Sunday best. My mom was knitting, and my dad was reading the newspaper, just like they would on any other evening. They looked up when the light came on, their faces breaking into wide, welcoming smiles. "Honey, you're here," my mom chirped as if she hadn't a care in the world. "We were just saying it was about time you arrived," my dad added, folding his paper neatly. I stared at them, then at the chaos around them. What happened here?" I stammered, pointing at the overturned armchair. My dad chuckled. "Oh, that? Just a bit of redecorating. Your mother thought the feng shui was off." My mom nodded enthusiastically, her knitting needles clicking away. "Exactly. It feels much more open now, don't you think?" They were acting completely normal. Too normal. It was terrifying. I noticed the mud on the carpet. "And the mud?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Oh, the dog must have tracked that in," my mom said with a wave of her hand. "We hadn't had a dog in 10 years. I felt like I was in a nightmare. I backed away slowly, my hand reaching for my phone in my pocket. I think I left something in the car," I lied, my mind racing. I needed to get out. I needed to call someone. As I turned, my eyes fell on the hallway that led to the bedrooms. At the very end, half hidden in the shadows, stood a figure. It was tall and gaunt, dressed in what looked like old, tattered rags. Its face was obscured by darkness, but I could feel its eyes on me. A cold, piercing gaze that seemed to suck the air right out of my lungs. I froze, unable to scream, unable to move. My parents didn't seem to notice it. My dad just cleared his throat and said, "Don't be long, dear. Dinner's almost ready." Dinner? How could they even think about dinner? I wanted to scream at them, to shake them and ask what was going on, who that person was. But the look in their eyes, it was vacant. They were smiling, but their eyes were empty, like dolls. The figure in the hall took a slow, shuffling step forward. The sound echoed in the silent house, a dry, scraping noise. That was it. I couldn't stay a second longer. I bolted out the front door, not even bothering to close it behind me. I scrambled into my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. As the engine roared to life, I glanced back at the house. In the upstairs window I saw it again, the tall, shadowy figure, standing perfectly still, watching me. And next to it I saw my parents' faces, pressed against the glass. They were still smiling, waving goodbye, as if I were just leaving after a pleasant Sunday dinner. I floored the gas pedal and didn't look back. I drove for what felt like hours, The image of their smiling, vacant faces burned into my mind. I finally pulled over on the side of the highway and called the police. I tried to explain what I saw, the trashed house, my parents' bizarre behavior, the figure in the shadows. They must have thought I was crazy. They sent a patrol car to do a wellness check. An hour later, an officer called me back. He said they'd gone to the house, and everything was perfectly fine. My parents were there, safe and sound. They told the officers I'd been under a lot of stress lately and was prone to imagining things. The officer told me the house was spotless. No overturned furniture, no broken lamps, no mud on the carpet. He said my parents were worried about me and asked if I was okay. I hung up the phone, completely bewildered. Was I going crazy? Did I imagine it all? But I know what I saw. The fear was real. The cold gaze of that figure was real. I haven't been back since. My parents call me sometimes, their voices cheerful and light, asking when I'm coming to visit again. They never mention that night. It's like it never happened. But for me, it's a memory that will haunt me forever. Sometimes late at night I feel like I'm still being watched, and I wonder what really happened in that house, and what is my family pretending not to see. If you've ever had a strange or unexplainable family experience, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Sometimes sharing our stories is the only way to make sense of them. Thanks for listening, and please stay safe out there. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.